welcome back to the Ready to Be Heard podcast. Today we're going to talk about something that so many business owners and life coaches out there think you have to be in order to have a successful podcast, to get seen online, and to draw attention all of the time. And this is the idea of being loud. Quite often people look at what's online, they look at the people that are popular, getting attention, and they're like, they're out there, they're loud, they're proud. I need to be louder, I need to be more like that to be seen. And internally you're going, but I can't be like that. That's not who I am, it's not what I do. And I'm here to tell you today how you can be seen, noticed online without having to be the loudest person in the room. That you don't have to derive too far from where you are. There might be some skills to develop. But it's not always about being the loudest. There are other elements that are so much more important, and there is value in not being the loudest person. Because if you think of the loudest person in the room when you're at a party, okay, sure, it is pulling attention, potentially. But sometimes that person is also the most annoying person in the room. They're not reading the room properly, they're being loud, they're just thinking about themselves and not considering everybody in the room. And that there's other ways to enjoy this moment without them being the loudest. There's also the fact, if you've ever been in an argument with someone, the person that's getting louder and louder is often trying to be heard the most and not being heard at all. If you're in a teaching context and you start to become the loudest, which is where all teachers go wrong, when they start shouting at children, a child knows pretty instinctively that the louder you get, the more you've lost control. And this is where we're not interested in just drawing attention for the sake of drawing attention, to the point of being annoying. As much as polarizing content can be useful, we're not there to be the loudest and not be heard still. And we're certainly not there because we're out of control. What we want to do is be out there talking about what we're talking about, but in a way that connects deeply with people. And that doesn't mean we have to shout it. There's an element that I'll talk about where shouting, as it were, or being loud is important, but we're not just there just to draw the attention. Chances are if you want a podcast or have a podcast, it's because you wanted to go deeper. You understood that these conversations that you were having, the things that you wanted to say, were nuanced. They aren't just you can state one thing and that be true or not, no matter what you say. I can have any belief that I want in the world, and I've shared many of them with you, such as, I don't believe it's right that you should be going for the podcast chart to launch your podcast with. For the people I have in mind, for the way that I did it, the charting wasn't the most important bit. It's lovely when it happens, and it's more rewarding when it happens, when it genuinely happened. Not because you use marketing ploys and manipulating the chart to get a number one charting podcast with your first 1 to 3 episodes. When you know you're not a seasoned host, you know that it's not your best work, but you manage to game the system. To me, that's inauthentic. But does it get people the result they were looking for? Sure. Some people don't mind that. They don't want that level of, I would call it integrity. They are just interested in what people view that podcast to have done, and they want to use that to boost themselves. It works, but to me it's not aligned. It's not got a form of integrity to it. And I don't like that. So that's the nuance to it. I can be bold in the statement that I don't believe in the podcast charts, but I can also appreciate that it does work to some degree. And so when you create content like that, where you're talking about your beliefs, you get to go into that nuance. And all of that means that everything is a little bit of a slower pace. It is designed for listeners to hear you and hear that you're not just one track, to hear that there's depth behind you as a person, and there's depth behind the ideas and what you teach and what you do. You don't just repeat the loudest thing online that gets heard. You've got these thoughts that you came up with in your head. And it takes them to this deeper level of trust. They are listening to what you have to say and why. Okay, sure, there was something that caught their attention, but they needed to understand how you came to that conclusion, to actually believe you, to decide that you weren't just chatting shit, and you actually know your stuff. Like, how do I know that that's true? Well, you can be the decider of what I just said about the podcast charts. Do you believe that it's probably nicer to enjoy the charts as a merit of you getting popular by your own good effort, making great content, being a good host? Or would you rather go straight to number one, even if it's not a very good show? Like, it could also be a very good show. But how do you know if you've never done it before? And it's all of this that is the advantage of not having to be the loudest, but of being thoughtful in what you're doing, in taking people on the journey with you and understanding where they're at and where they go. Because it's this sharing of beliefs that's important. You've also got the element of dynamics too. We talk about this as part of the presentation section of the Smile and Shine Generator when clients of mine are taking part in the Powerful Podcast Launchpad. We're looking at them using dynamics in their voice, movement up and down. You can't just be loud, talking all the time, because that gets boring. And you can't just be talking constantly and never ever stopping, because that's really pressuring your audience to keep up with you, make sure they keep listening, and never giving them the pause to take a chance to think. So there are these things we can do to have dramatic effect, if you want to call it that. Now, I don't sit there too much and think about my dynamics anymore. I did it very particularly then, just to make sure that you could see what I was thinking. I think having a drama background, for one, sets me up fairly well for that. And then teaching, I mean, you can't just deliver maths monotonously, can you? It's boring. So you have to come up with ways to make it interesting, and you can see the characterization coming out in what I'm doing here. All of those things. I don't think I'm the loudest person in any room. Socially, definitely not. You might think, well, she's so confident on camera. You know, she's so bold in what she's doing. And I believe we'll come to the distinction between bold and loud before long. And I believe in that part. In a social setting, I'm not going to be the loudest. If you give me the job of sorting something out, I'll get it done. And in which case, it gets done and decisions are made, that redness coming out. But I'm not the loudest. The yellow people in the room are the loudest, the most popular, the social, and that's cool. I'm a bit more considered, a little bit more reserved in that sense. I've got things to say, but I'll say them in the right environment. Now, let's go to the extremes of this. The thing is, we can't be silent. So whilst I don't need you being loud to be seen online, I also can't have you being silent at all. Oh, you don't have to be loud. Chantel's saying it's okay. No. We still need you to be able to talk. We still need you to be able to share. And this is where the art of attention grabbing is important, but this is the difference. Obviously, with a theatre background, I'm taken back to my musical theatre days. And we're talking, I would say, 10 years ago. 2015 is striking me as a sort of time, somewhere between 2012 and 2015. Now, a lot of shows get a lot of hype. And that is the attention they're drawing, they're getting reviews and so on. And so, there are two shows I want to talk about here. Book of Mormon. Book of Mormon would have been a show that I think I would have seen around, if the timings make sense, something like, I think, it's somewhere between 2012 and 2014. 2012 to 2014. It's meant to be an amazing show. Great reviews. Of course, all the reviews you put online or that you show are the best ones. You're not going to put you got 3 or 2 stars, are you? Come along now. You're going to highlight the best bits. It's meant to be funny. I believe the writers are someone, or some of the writing team are part of the team that wrote one of my favourite musicals, Avenue Q. I don't know if that's true, but in my head, something about that is right. Or is it just that they're from South Park? Did I make that up? Oh, I don't know. Book of Mormon writers. And I'm gonna... Oh, it is Robert Lopez. Yeah. Avenue Q. Also Robert Lopez. Okay, yes, so I'm not factually incorrect there. Phew! Never be afraid to fact check yourself. So we booked the tickets, went along, and I was thoroughly disappointed. I didn't find it that funny. I didn't think it was that good. And this, I absolutely love Avenue Q. It's not exactly the same team. It's just got one of the same writers. Or, I don't know if they did the music or what. But, yeah, fell flat. I would not recommend seeing it to anyone. But I know plenty of people enjoy it. But all of that hype, all of that excitement, all of that attention grabbing it got, and to me, it didn't fulfill anything. A year or two later, I think, we're dealing with another show. A show very similar, getting lots of great reviews, a bit more groundbreaking, I would say. Hamilton the musical. Me, couldn't care less about Hamilton. Had been scorned by Book of Mormon. Wasn't going to trust any of these reviews. Wasn't interested in seeing it. And I certainly wasn't going to pay for going to see it if I didn't think I was going to like it. Wouldn't even listen to the soundtrack. I'm not interested. I don't want to know. That's how much I'd got that, despite the attention it was getting. And then my partner at the time happened to be working. He worked for Cameron Mackintosh. And therefore, they got tickets to the night before the first opening night. Press night? No, it must have been the first opening night. Press night comes a bit later, I think. Anyway, tickets to go to check that the new ticketing system worked, to check that front of house could do their jobs. Cameron Mackintosh was there, and he basically did an announcement at the start. Was like, well, these packets of nuts aren't staying because it's too noisy getting it all out. This is the detail that this man goes to. Incredible man in the theatre world. Really cares about the art of shows and the experience of theatre. And I just love that he mentioned that as he was talking. I'm sure it was a little packet. Watched it, adored it, loved it. So it's really important. Like, both of them got my attention. One of them compelled me to go see it, and I was disappointed thoroughly. My expectations were really high as a result of all of that attention. The next one came along, all of that attention, all of that good stuff, wasn't going to listen. Couldn't listen. Had been cheated by paying tickets for something that I didn't enjoy, really didn't enjoy, and was so disappointed with, to then be pleasantly surprised by something. They've got our attention in different ways, and we have to get good at getting attention, but we also have to get good at the follow-up delivery. There's only so far that you can get with getting attention in the moment and then not following up with something. And I don't want any of you to fall into that. And I think the difference between being loud and being bold, both of them still need follow-up. But loudness is all about volume, talking faster, getting people to look your way, notice you, see what you are doing the whole way through, taking up space, and just getting lots and lots of attention. Whereas being bold has a level of being loud to it. But you don't have to be shouting. You don't have to perform. This is about you delivering what you know in a very clear and succinct way with an absolute level of confidence and conviction. And you say the things that matter. They're the things that hit deep in a room rather than being the things that are just there for show. You are having that level of impact. And it is the analogy of you sparking the light of a match, placing yourself next to another match that then your light triggers the light of. And that can happen, if you've got matches laid down and another bunch of matches all spurring off them in a circle, then you light 5 more matches. And each of those can have more attached to them, and they can go and light 5 more matches, and having that ripple effect. But you do that without shouting. You do that delivering it with confidence, with conviction, with clarity, and you're delivering that in that softness. You don't just have to be loud in the moment. And there are times where it's right to be loud and proud and really going for it in attention. But we want people to hear one sentence and for the penny to drop. To have the power in the value of your words and for it to have that ripple effect. Some families have that one person in them that everyone can be arguing, everyone can be squabbling, and it's getting louder and louder and louder. And then one person, usually someone that's a little bit older than most of the people in the conversation, cuts through the noise with one sentence, with a couple of wise words, and also a statement about how everything is going to proceed from this point if everyone's at each other's throats. And it's that person that has the most impact over the people that are squabbling and discussing. It's the person that can cut through the noise, make people stop in their tracks for a different reason to actually think. So rather than thinking that you have to be loud, I want you to go out there and think how you can be bold. I want you to think about the beliefs you have, thoughts and views that you have that aren't necessarily commonplace, that you can put out there, that you can start spreading your message with, having your spark lighting event take place with, to spark more lights in other people who can then follow that on and on and on and have that ripple effect of change that I know you want to have on the people you work with and the rest of the world. Until next time, be bold, be seen, be ready to be heard.